I appreciate you holding today's hearing on this important topic. I think it's absolutely critical. We find ways to work to ensure our elections are free, fair, and secure. And photo ID is a simple, common sense way that we can assure that every legal vote is counted and only legal votes are counted. 36 states currently require some form of voter ID to vote. In 2020, we saw more people cast their vote than in any presidential election in history. In fact, voter turnout increased in every state, including some of the sharpest increases occurring in states that required voter ID. And further dispelling the myth that voter ID laws deter voting, voter turnout increased among all race groups in 2020. And contrary to some of the written testimony put forward in the real world, I think it's clear that voter ID does not deter people from legally voting. The data just doesn't support it. Common sense doesn't support it. And I think the American people know that. Among the states that asked for ID to vote is my home state of Wisconsin, as well as the home state of the President of the United States, Delaware. Other states include Connecticut, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, and the list goes on. And for the purpose of this hearing, I'll reiterate what I've said at previous hearings. Republicans want to ensure that every eligible person who wants to vote is able to cast a vote. And that we make sure that every lawful ballot is counted according to state law. We want to make sure that it's easy to vote and hard to cheat. The far left has been working overtime to mischaracterize new voting laws across the United States. The left's characterization of voter laws, like those recently passed in Georgia and other states, earned multiple Pinocchios and pants on fires when they were rated by fact checkers. Unfortunately, Democrats' election legislation, H.R. 1 or S1, in the Senate, it guts voter ID laws. And they continue to push this false narrative that election safeguards like voter ID are somehow racist or an attempt by Republicans to suppress the votes of Americans from minority communities. Americans are used to showing their ID to do common things like open a bank account, buy alcohol, fly on a plane. I don't believe my local bank or the Quick Trip convenience store or the TSA is racist or has discriminatory intent when they ask for my ID. I think it's common practice. But even if a voter doesn't have an ID on election day, states have a process to allow the voter to cast their vote by filling out a provisional ballot. This ensures their vote, if proven lawful, is counted and that the voter is not denied their constitutional right to vote. For example, Texas has, whose voting practices are often, I think, unfairly characterized, accept a voter's utility bill, bank statement, government check, birth certificate, or a paycheck. Delaware also has a process for this. These options make sure that access to the polls for all Americans to legally participate in the process. Equally as important as ensuring voters have access to the polls is ensuring people have confidence in our election results, and voter ID laws can help with this. Most Americans would agree that it's important that only U.S. citizens are voting in our elections. We recently saw in Illinois issues where hundreds of non-citizens were accidentally registered to vote through the state's automatic voter registration program. This is a problem for the obvious reason that we don't want illegal votes cast in our elections. But it's also a problem because if an ineligible individual voted because flawed automatic voter registration made them think that they'd face serious consequences if caught, all because of the state's error. And unfortunately, the Democrats' legislation, H.R. 1 or S1, it mandates automatic voter registration, but it doesn't mandate any of the safeguards be built in to ensure mistakes like that don't happen. These kinds of issues also undermine public confidence in our elections, which we should be working to promote. We should be supportive of safeguards like voter ID that do not make it more difficult for people to vote, but it does make it more difficult for people to cheat. The success of our elections is reliant on the trust voters place in the system. So if we're exploring ways to ensure more people vote, I think it would be good to have a discussion about how the level of confidence people have in the accuracy of our voting system can impact people's choice to vote or not. With that, Mr. Chairman, I thank you and I look forward to today's hearing.